This has been a fascinating season of House of the Dragon, and it's been even more fascinating to see the online reaction to the various characters, in particular the Greens. I see a lot of hate thrown their way, some warranted, and some maybe not. I wanted to take this moment to produce a video before the storm begins of why Team Green might not be as bad as you think, and when looking at their motives from their perspective, why they might be the better choice to have sat on the throne. I'll only be using information the Greens would be privy to and why this would paint their motives, and why Alicent, throughout it all, is probably right. After the jump, I'll be handing over the mic to the incredibly talented Liam of the Shifterverse YouTube channel. So let's get into it.
It's only right that we begin with Lady Alicent. From the beginning, she was used as a chess piece by Otto to slide into the void left by the tragic death of Aemond, the queen and wife of King Viserys. The king at the time had no male heirs, and in a rage had disinherited Aemond Targaryen, his brother, for he had uttered a truly abhorrent line about the short-lived Prince Balon.
The heir for a day.
Daemon was cast aside, and Viserys instead raised his daughter, Rhaenyra, to become heir to the throne. A bold and unusual move that goes against customs, and is the very reason why Viserys is currently the king. Disinheriting Daemon was not a bad idea at the time, especially considering how he was dispensing his brand of justice in King's Landing, acting as judge, jury, and executioner. We don't want another King Maegor to inherit the throne. He was known as the Cruel for a reason. This only gets worse when you think he was potentially involved with the death of his wife, Rhea Royce, an accusation brought forward by her cousin, Sir Gerald Royce. As is again custom, a king shouldn't be without a wife, because it's important for him to produce heirs to inherit the throne. Too many times have eggs been placed into one basket, only to be crushed. It's wise to have a few spread out, in case ill fates befall one. As Viserys was without a wife, it was good to give him an option of suitors. The Valerians offered up their 12-year-old daughter, Laena, whilst Otto offered his daughter, Alicent, who was 15 years of age at the time, a much better fit for the king, especially considering they had a bond as seen by their many meetings, and ultimately it was the king's choice who he chose to wed. He married for the idea of love over power. A noble choice. Over the next 3 years, Alicent would carry out her duty, and would bear Viserys a son, Aegon II, and a daughter, Helena. They would be further joined by 2 more younger brothers. With Aegon's birth, it was only natural that the question of his ascension to heir would come about, and it was expected this would take place on his 3rd birthday. After all, that is the way of things. It's been this way for decades, if not centuries, even before the arrival of the Targaryens, and even then they had followed that same custom, of the males of the family inheriting the position of their ancestors. Since being named as heir, Rhaenyra has done a poor job of fulfilling her role, often keeping to herself, and staying away from meeting the other houses, preferring to in fact read books under a tree, accompanied by a singer. This is unbefitting from an heir. As an heir, it's important to know the houses you will rule over, and become acquainted with your subjects. A distant person is destined to be a lonely one. Rhaenyra would also have public outbursts and spats with her father, and often bristled at performing her duties. It was left to Otto to act as a voice of reason, and calm the king and his daughter in front of the other houses, at what was in fact a celebration of Aegon's birthday. In a private meeting, Viserys reiterated why he disinherited Daemon.
I named her to protect the realm from Daemon. I named her Heart of Love because I no longer believed.
And why placing Rhaenyra on the throne might have been a mistake. Viserys then went to explain to Alicent about having a dream that he would have a son who would bear Aegon's crown. He tried again to recapture the dream, but couldn't, and how his obsession caused the death of his first wife in pursuit of a son, and that's part of his reason for appointing Rhaenyra as his heir to set things right. But maybe he was wrong. Otto would go on to explain how excited the other houses were at the prospect of Aegon being king, and how Rhaenyra overstepping Aegon would tear the realm apart. The realm wants a man on the throne, not a woman, and it's important to listen to the people and respect the laws of gods and men. It was due to Alicent's noble advice that Viserys was willing to put aside his disputes with Daemon and the Velaryons, and to send aid to them, despite their thirst for war. She put it rather eloquently as to why Viserys should send aid.
Is it better for the realm if the crab feeder thrives, or is vanquished?
It was also on Alicent's advice, against her own father's wishes on trying to persuade Viserys to pick Aegon, that Viserys should allow Rhaenyra to try and find her own match, and without explicitly saying it, ascend the throne. Alicent continues to try to put her estranged friend Rhaenyra and heir to the throne ahead of herself, her own children, and the realm, because she believes in loyalty. She also continues to try and bridge the breach between herself and Rhaenyra. However, Rhaenyra continues to have these selfish tirades and spouts nonsense on how she wishes to be something more than someone who pushes out heirs, with almost an eerily close description of Alicent's life. Giving birth to the heirs of the realm is a great honor, and Rhaenyra is afforded the option of picking her partner, a choice many other women in Westeros are denied. Continuing the line is of the utmost importance, regardless if you're a man or a woman. One pivotal night, the hand of the king is informed of Rhaenyra's transgressions with her uncle Daemon, in a pleasure house of all places. Otto, with a heavy heart, informs Viserys of this in private, trying to avoid embarrassing Viserys in front of his small council. Viserys doesn't take it well, despite the fact servants had seen Rhaenyra returning to the castle at late hour. Instead of taking her father's word for it, Alicent instead meets Rhaenyra to question her about these worrying accusations. The trusting queen takes the princess's word for it. Alicent would go on to vouch for her friend's virtue to the king, as Daemon is once again banished from King's Landing. And in talking to the king, Alicent explains that maybe they can't trust Daemon's word on the matter, as he often lies, whilst it is not within Rhaenyra's nature to be deceitful. By taking Rhaenyra's side, this results in the loss of position for Otto, as he is removed as Hand of the King. With the recent victory over the Triarchy, the Velaryons have emboldened themselves, and sought a member for Rhaenyra Velaryon, who is now 15 years old herself. By potentially marrying Rhaenyra to a nobleman in Braavos, the Velaryons would have a huge chunk of control over the trade routes to Westeros. The Velaryons already have one of, if not the biggest armies in the realm, and are certainly the richest. This puts them in a position of power in having a stranglehold over the king and in turn the realm. In an attempt to fix things and strengthen his house, Viserys goes to Driftmark with his daughter in tow to propose a marriage between Rhaenyra and the Velaryons' eldest son and heir, Laenor. During their absence, Alicent sees her father off. They quarrel for a moment, and Alicent puts forth that if Otto had relented on pushing Aegon for the throne, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Otto would go on to warn Alicent that she needs to protect herself.
The realm will not accept her, and to secure her claim, she'll have to put your children to the sword. She'll have no choice.
For he is a father who has foreseen what unrest will occur when Rhaenyra ascends the throne. Whilst pondering in the gardens, Alicent would receive worrying news from a new friend in Larys Strong, who speaks of the injustice done to Otto, And maybe Rhaenyra's recent illness has her reliability in question.
It's just that on the very same night your father was dismissed, the Grand Maester delivered a tea to the princess's chambers.
A tea?
Yes.
In further investigation, Alicent would question Sir Criston Cole of the Kingsguard on Rhaenyra's whereabouts on that fateful night, only to receive a stunning admission from the knight.
I have committed it. At her instigation, it is true, but it is no excuse.
In an act of mercy, she lets the knight go. She will not allow Rhaenyra's recklessness to ruin any more lives, and she will not allow her lies to blind her vision anymore. At the great feast for Rhaenyra's betrothal to Laenor, Alicent arrives late in a stunning green dress, and stands tall to honor her father and her heritage of House Hightower. Tragedy would sadly strike during the feast, as Sir Criston would slay Joffrey, the Knight of Kisses, during a fight. A man of faith might see this as a bad omen on the union of Rhaenyra and Laenor. Alicent would find Sir Criston near the weirwood tree, and stop him from committing suicide. Enough blood had been spilt that night, and he was a good man. An honest knight, and surely he had good cause for the fight with Joffrey. There's no need for his death when he can still serve the realm. A decade passes, and Rhaenyra's third son, Joffrey, is born. Eager to see her new grandson, Alicent requests that he be brought to her chambers so she can see Joffrey, along with an eager Viserys. Unfortunately, Joffrey doesn't bear the traditional silver hair that both House Targaryen and Velaryon are famous for, putting in dispute his heritage, along with his brothers, Jacerys and Lucerys, who also lack the silver hair of their parents. One only needs to look at the union of Daemon and Lyanna to see what the boys should look like. Alicent brings this up to Viserys, who continues to play the fool in favor of protecting his daughter.
To have one child like that is a mistake. To have 3 is an insult. To the throne, to you. To House Velaryon and the match you battled so hard to make for her, not to mention decency itself. Have I lost my sanity, Sir Criston? Do my senses lead me astray, or is everyone else asleep, dreaming the same woolly dream?
Sometimes seems so, Your Grace.
However, Alicent still suspects those around her to act honorable and decent above all, and those are virtues they should aspire to, and what she tries to instill in her children to the best of her ability. During some training in the dragon pits, her second son, Aemond, almost loses his life due to sneaking into the caves for a closer look at a dragon. He does this as a result of being bullied by his brother, Aegon, and the 2 Velaryon boys for not having a dragon. To add further salt to the wounds, Lucerys proceeded to give Aemond a pig, unfittingly named the Pink Dread. The bullying would continue throughout Aemond's formative years, and would later result in a dispute at Viserys' Last Supper. At a council meeting, Rhaenyra proposes a match between Alicent's daughter Helaena and Rhaenyra's eldest son Jacerys. This is an absolute insult to the honorable queen. Rhaenyra might be able to fool the king, but she cannot fool the queen, who continues to look through the superficial offers of a dragon egg and uniting their houses. Rhaenyra's sons are bastards, and it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that this will be brought up someday. It's already the gossip of the castle, and Sir Harwin Strong, in a fit of madness, disgraces himself in attacking Sir Criston Cole in the courtyard. Sir Lionel, knowing the truth of the Queen's children, tries to resign his position, but the King refuses. He simply won't see reason, and is again blind to Rhaenyra's transgressions. Thankfully, Rhaenyra takes this moment to reflect, and to remove herself and her family from the court to the island of Dragonstone. Speaking in confidence to Larys Strong, Alicent confesses her wishes of having her father back in court, to help her and be a voice of reason. For too long has she had the cards stacked against her, and it's time to right a wrong that was done to Otto. Unfortunately, Larys acted on impulse in trying to please the Queen, and had his father and brother killed. A horrified Alicent is unsure of how to act, and tries to distance herself from this new Lord of Harrenhal. During a funeral for Lyanna Velaryon at Driftmark, her son Aemond is able to achieve his dream and claim the dragon Vhagar. This dream would shortly turn into a nightmare when he is assaulted in the caves by his nephews Jacerys and Lucerys, alongside his cousins and daughters of Daemon, Baela, and Rhaella. During the assault, Aemond was heroically able to gain the upper hand before Lucerys viciously sliced at Aemond's face, causing him to lose an eye and wear a hideous scar for the rest of his life. What justice is dispensed for a vicious attack on the prince, you ask? None. The king once more refuses to pass punishment on the vicious Prince Lucerys and Jacerys. Instead, Rhaenyra takes the opportunity to deflect suspicions and gain further powers of protection by turning this onto poor Aemond, asking where he had heard rumors of Lucerys and Jacerys being bastards. Knowing no shame, she goes another step further and says he should be questioned sharply, which means to be tortured.
Over an insult. My son has lost an eye.
An outrageous request considering he had just lost an eye, and is only freshly sewn up by the Maester. The hypocrisy of Rhaenyra trying to cover her lies and her son's bastard heritage by calling Aemond and anyone else who questions the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's sons liars. Eventually, the king questions Aegon, who speaks the truth about where he heard rumors about the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's sons.
We know, Father. Everyone knows. Just look at them.
Instead of accepting this, Viserys claims any more talk of the legitimacy of these children will be met with the removal of tongues.
Thank you, Father.
Outraged at this injustice, Alicent, in a justifiable moment of madness, seeks to claim the eye of Lucerys Velaryon herself. Any parent would feel the same way. If your child was bullied, you try to defend them against those bullies. Her son has been permanently disfigured and given a disability for the rest of his life for speaking the truth. That is truly unjust, and she sets out to even the scales. Confronted by Rhaenyra, she gives the lying princess a scar in retribution. Later that week, interestingly enough I might add, the good knight Laenor Velaryon is attacked and killed in his own father's halls, and not long after, Rhaenyra weds her uncle Daemon. A rather suspicious wedding that draws questions that perhaps Rhaenyra had her good husband killed, so that she could marry her uncle. 6 more years pass, and in Rhaenyra's absence, Alicent and Otto Hightower have been ruling the realm in the king's stead, due to his continuing poor health. They have had to carry the burden of ruling, because Rhaenyra has kept herself to Dragonstone, ignoring her duties to the realm. It is only when Lucerys' claim to Driftmark is questioned by Aemond Velaryon that Rhaenyra returns once more. Her first port of call is to visit her father, and cause him further stress. Unfortunately for our pious queen, in the past 6 years her own son Aegon has proven to be a rather ignoble prince, and has raped a servant. Alicent kindly deals with the servant, and offers her a bag of gold. Enough to hopefully start a new life, and moon tea to cleanse her body of this unfortunate situation. Alicent then goes one step further than Viserys would with his own daughter, and scolds and disowns her son Aegon.
Is it today?
You are no son of mine.
What he's done is a horrible act unbefitting of a future king, and more importantly, a son of hers. She will not repeat the mistakes of Viserys by letting the actions of her children go unpunished. She then meets with the rather rude Rhaenyra and Aemond, who continue to question the care given to the king.
King Viserys' condition has worsened since you saw him last. It subjects him to considerable pain on the advice of the Maesters.
Oh, the Maesters, of course. It is they who keep him addled on milk of the poppy while the Hightowers warm his throne.
Rhaenyra, if you would see him without it.
Who are they to question her? Where have they been? They abandoned the king for 6 years and expect to swan in for a grand reception. It's always about them and their needs. Alicent continues to keep composure and leave the bickering. The court gathers within the throne room, where Aemond Velaryon puts forth his case, and Otto hears him out despite Rhaenyra trying to make a mockery of the proceedings, throwing out accusations of bias. As it comes for Rhaenyra's turn to talk, the ill king enters the throne room to take over and settle matters, as is his right. Unfortunately, Aemond Velaryon, incensed by the injustice, continues his case and throws out some rather unkind words at the princess.
And she is a whore.
Before the king can carry out punishment on Aemond, Daemon rather cheaply beheads the man from behind. A stark reminder, or threat, that there is only one truth in this room. Their truth. Later that night, Viserys holds a supper for the family, and Alicent tries to make peace with Rhaenyra and her household, for her sake, her family's sake, and her king's sake.
You will make a fine queen.
It's time to bury the hatchet, and considering Aegon's transgressions, she can hardly put him on the throne over Rhaenyra. That would be purely hypocritical. Unfortunately, Aemond is mocked for his scar and disability by Lucerys, who can barely control his own laughter as he stares at Aemond. Incensed by this, Aemond returns fire, despite Alicent trying to stop him and to keep the peace. What's the best way Aemond can return an insult from Lucerys? All he has to do is speak the truth.
Strong.
Aemond.
Come. Let us drain our cups. Strong boys.
I dare you to say that again.
Why?
Of course, the Velaryon boys can't take it when they are on the other end of the mockery and try to start a fight, which is quickly finished by Aemond and his brother. The good Queen Alicent still tries to reconcile with Rhaenyra by stating it would be nice for Rhaenyra to return to King's Landing and spend time with herself and Viserys. She is still trying to hold that olive branch out, which Rhaenyra accepts. Later that night, though, Alicent tends to the king, as she has done throughout all these years. Through a decade and a half of illness to comfort him, Viserys would go on to repeat a story about his dream, Aegon's dream. Aegon is the one to unite the realm against the cold and the dark. He finishes it by saying that Alicent must do it.
It is you. You are the one. You must do this.
And Alicent, as always, the dutiful wife and queen.
I understand, my king.
She must put her son on the throne, and try to guide him as best she can. It was Viserys' last wish, and the gods gave him strength to utter those words.
I want to give another huge thanks to Liam for lending me his voice and doing an incredible job of narrating this piece. He's really elevated this in my opinion. You need to go check out his YouTube channel where he hosts his incredible story, The Shifterverse. You can find book 1 on there already, and he does the voices, sound effects and music all by himself. A man of many talents. I'll also be attaching an excerpt of his book at the end of this video, so you can give it a listen if you're not already convinced to go visit. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It was a fun one to put together. Maybe I've turned some loyalists from Rhaenyra's sides to the Greens. I do wish the show itself had tried to be more impartial rather than make one side look worse than the other. But if you look at the story from a Green's point of view, they have been wronged at a lot of junctures. Anyway, if you now side with the Greens, hit that like button, disagree, hit that dislike button, and let me know what you thought of it all in the comments below. Heck, if you want me to do a video from Rhaenyra's perspective, let me know too. And feel free to check out some of my previous episodes reviews. I'm so hyped for this Sunday's episode of the Green Council. It's gonna be dramatic. Have a good one.
The rattling of the craft then intensified, causing Rook's heart to surge as he clenched his fists and closed his eyes, embracing what would surely be his destruction. Then, waves of calm flushed through him as the rattling ceased, replaced by the gentle hum of the craft's mag engine. His heart rate returned to normal, his fists unclenched. Rook let out a lengthy sigh of relief. I don't think our new comrade likes to penetrate things. Can't have that noise with us, can we, lads? Rook looked up, startled. His momentary panic had caused him to forget he was not alone in the craft's deployment bay. The statement had come from Jest, who was, no doubt, trying to ease Rook's very visible nervousness with humour and an attempt to make Rook feel included in this group, of which he was almost certain he did not belong.